Hello everybody and welcome to a video on the Constructive Criticism YouTube channel. My name is Spencer, I'm the host of Constructive Criticism, and the producer of Limited Time Only and Common Knowledge, podcasts about getting better at Magic the Gathering. I am so excited to bring you a deck that I'm testing for GP Vegas. So GP Vegas is coming up, I'm going to be playing in the Modern main event at least, and I'm just kind of getting back into the groove of Modern, and I wanted to test decks that both excited me and I thought were well positioned in the metagame. So today I want to talk about Naya Titanshift. This is something that I've tried a few times. There are a few things that I think that Naya adds to the deck without taking away the essence behind Titanshift. So let's get started. So the first thing that I think that both Naya and Green-Red Titanshift should be able to do right now is play Engineered Explosives. Engineered Explosives is really good against humans. It's really good against Death Shadow decks that you will pick up against on the random, on the side, the side of GPs and GP side events. A lot of players just bring the decks that they have. So if they invested in Naya Titanshift, Grixis Death Shadow or Jund Death Shadow or 4-color Death Shadow a few months ago, they probably still have those decks, and a lot of them are still going to be end up playing them. So one of the things that Engineered Explosive does for this deck is it allows you to play cards that are good against multiple strategies that are attacking you in different ways, but at certain parts of the curve. And so I think Naya does a really good job of doing a better job of playing this card than Green-Red, right? Because you can play it for more mana. And that is important. And I think that Engineered Explosives right now is at a very important spot in the format. I've talked to my co-host on Constructive Criticism about it. We both agree that Engineered Explosives is at a high. So I think that it's pretty important to be playing this in your deck. I have one Relic of Progenitus in the main. This is a card that kind of drives you through your deck, but also has some equity to give you Game 1 wins against other certain styles of decks, things like that. I think that it's just air in your deck that happens to be very good. So I'm pretty happy with the 1-min deck, Relic of Progenitus. We have 4 Primeval Titan. Primeval Titan, the namesake of the deck, right? It's called Titanshift for a reason. It is a Primeval Titan Scapeshift deck. And Primeval Titan does a lot of work in this deck. It allows you to win, you play it, and if you attack, just like Valakut decks of old, you usually win the game. So it's a must-answer threat that also just clogs up the board. There aren't 6/6s in Modern. You're not going to have to worry about things for the most part. I mean, other than, decks like Death Shadow. Death Shadow is probably going to be the biggest creature, and Primeval Titan is probably going to be the second biggest. It's just a very large creature that gets in tons and tons and tons of value by grabbing your lands, fixing your mana. I mean, fixing your mana is probably not true. It doesn't do that often. But, just going to grab a couple of mountains to set you up for a better Valakut turn, or grabbing a couple of Valakuts to set you up for, a different Valakut turn the next turn, just depending on how the game plays out, it is a ton. And then there's the 6/6 body that's presenting close to 18 damage, or close to 9 damage plus 6, so 15 damage the next turn. We have 4 Sakura-Tribe Elders and 1 Wood Elves. I think that this split is really important. I think that any list that I see without playing Wood Elves, I get really confused by. It basically costs 2 mana because it grabs that force into play untapped. So it lets you ramp, the same way that Sakura-Tribe Elder does, to ramp the same turn you play Scapeshift and win the game. Get you from 6 to 8, basically, right? Because you play a land, play this, you get to go off and win games that you needed a ramp spell to do. And so you want as many of this style of effect as possible between this Tribe Elder Farseek. It plays an important role in the fact that it gets to block where Farseek doesn't, right? And that means a lot. It really does. So we have 4 Path to Exile. Path to Exile is one that it is definitely worse in your deck than Bolt. But I think in the context of Modern right now, and specifically when we talk about Grand Prix, you're going to see creatures that Bolt's not going to kill at Grand Prix level. Whether it's Hollowed One, whether it's Gurmag Angler, whether it's Death Shadow, and I would just rather have Path in my deck right now and give them a little bit back into the game through that mana to give me a turn to combo off. And, there's going to be matchups where that's not as good, and there's going to be games definitely where it's not as good as Bolt, but I think it's a risk-reward type of thing, and I think the Path to Exile, just being able to answer anything, is actually very good in Scapeshift specifically. We have 2 Summoner's Pact. I don't utilize this as much as other people. I really should have, Reclamation Sage somewhere in the board or maybe in the main, depending on the context of the format. And that's something that I'll work out as I get ready for GP Vegas and figure out where I want things, how many Summoner's Pact I want, how many Summoner's Pact targets do I want. But Summoner's Pact does a lot of work, acting as extra Titans, acting as extra ramp spells, acting as extra Tireless Trackers and Obstinate Baloths and things like that. So we have a split between Chandra and Nahiri, and I want to talk about the split for a second because one of the things that Nahiri does really, really well in this deck is you get a plus and it's big game. You get a minus and it's big game. You get to search your library for Titan and you win the game. And so this deck, all of her abilities are very, very, very good, and I don't have to play Emrakul to make that happen. One of the problems with other modern Nahiri decks is that they had to play Emrakul in order to make this work. Even Naya Titan decks tried to play Emrakul, and the truth is you didn't need to do that. You can just play Primeval Titan, and Nahiri is just as good. Now, the reason that I have the split is because I think these Planeswalkers are different. I think that Chandra is a proactive Planeswalker, and Nahiri is a reactive Planeswalker. And I wanted a split between the two of those, but that doesn't mean that that's where I'll end up. It could be that I just want 2 Nahiris, which is where I usually start. But I've played so much Titanshift and so much of this deck that I wanted to go back to the split that I had already tried. So, I don't know where I'll end up. I think that Chandra does a lot of similar things to Nahiri, but I do think Nahiri fits this deck better. The thing is the deck is so good at weirdly controlling the board that oftentimes you actually can ultimate your Chandra in the same way that you can ultimate your Nahiri. So it's a kind of a diversification of threats and also a diversification of how you want to deal with things. To be honest, I will probably end up playing 2 Nahiri, but this is what I'm testing right now. We have 1 Anger of the Gods and 1 Sweltering Suns. I think this split is really important. One of the things that people are playing is Meddling Mage, and if you aren't splitting these cards, they just get to name the same one every time. And that makes this harder for you. The split is important. You need to play the split. They're basically the same card outside of one matchup. That's not true, right? Because you can cycle Sweltering Suns against control, but if you're doing that, you're usually losing. So outside of Dredge, they're almost the same card. But there's not a ton of Dredge right now. I think the split is very valuable, and it's something you should be doing. I have 2 Farseek in this deck. This number fluctuates. You really want to be playing 3 to maximize your ramp spells, and that is one of the downsides of playing white-black versus, or not white-black, playing Naya versus playing green-red, is that you do play 1 less, sometimes 2 less ramp spells. And that does affect the consistency of your deck a little bit, as well as your mana base. But I do think that is something that you can change if you think that the format doesn't call for it or needs more ramp. Kind of depending on what's going on. We have 2 Hour of Promise. I've been so weird on this card. So the first tournament that I played the Hour of Promise in was a PPTQ. I played 2 Hour of Promise, and I was like, well, that was the wrong number. Immediately went to 4, started crushing Moto, and then I was like, actually, this is too many. Went all the way down to 0, and now I'm back up to 2. This card is a little format dependent. When there's a ton of Spell Pierces and a ton of Stubborn Denials, it gets worse. But right now, we're not in that spot yet. And because of that, this card has gained equity and is a 2 of in my deck again. Obviously, one of the deck's namesake, Scapeshift, is in the deck. Just for those who kind of want to understand how the deck works. When you're on 7 lands, you can Scapeshift and deal them 18. When you're on 8 lands, it escalates. And then 9 lands, there's no way that they can have enough life total. One of the things that we'll talk about is the number of mountains in this deck. And that versus the green-red decks, that versus the 4-color decks, and the rug decks, but understanding how your Scapeshift works, how many lands you can play versus maybe a tech edge versus a ghost quarter and things like that is important. We have 4 Search for tomorrow. This is another one where the land comes into play untapped, so you can ramp this on 7, or on even on 6 to go to 7. Have an untapped land to go to 8 or 7. Kind of just depends, but definitely puts in a lot of work. You also can suspend it on turn 1, which is easily your best play, makes the deck significantly better. So Our land base is 2 Cinder Glade, 3 Forest, 4 Mountain, 1 Plains, 1 Sacred Foundry, 2 Sheltered Thicket, 3 Stomping Grounds, 1 Temple Garden, 3 Valakut, 2 Windswept Heath, and 4 Wooded Foothills. So let's just go over the mountains. So we have 2 Cinder Glade, that's 2, 4 Mountain, that's 6, 1 Sacred Foundry, that's 7, 2 Sheltered Thickets, that's 8 and 9, 3 Stomping Grounds, and that makes 12. So we do have less than green-red, but we do have more than Rug and 4-color. Knowing the number of mountains in your deck is really important in Scapeshift. This is how people make misplays, is they don't actually keep track of this throughout the game, and they don't know what turns they can go off and how much damage they can deal. So, the way that the deck works is Valakut, when you cast a Primeval Titan, or when you cast a Scapeshift, your lands all enter the battlefield at the same time. So if I grab a Valakut and my 6th mountain, it deals 3. If I have 2 Valakuts in play, or let's say I Scapeshift, because this is actually where it's important, is you need to have the right number of mountains. And the 5th and the 6th can enter at the same time, but it doesn't trigger when the 5th hits. So both will trigger if it's the 5th and the 6th, but none will trigger if it's just the 5th. So understanding that is really important for both you and your opponent, and also understanding when they can interact with you. So for example, if they Ghost Quarter you with the trigger on the stack, the triggers are still going to resolve. If they, if they do it the right way, you need to be aware of that. And it's kind of trying to understand that. So let's talk about the sideboard. So I have the other Relic of Progenitus in the board. This is something that I've played in the main deck for a long time. I wanted to fit in the things that I thought were really important, so I did have to cut one of these. I have 3 Obstinate Baloths. This is a cut down because we are playing Leyline in the board. So with 4 Leyline of Sanctities, I felt like I needed less Obstinate Baloths because they come in a lot of the same matchups. Obstinate Baloth is good against Jund, it's good against Control, it's good against... it's good against everything, whereas Leyline is basically for Burn and Jund. So, and Mono Black, which is the worst. I have never lost to the discard deck. I don't remember what it's called. It's like the Black Vice deck. I don't remember. But it is something that people play both at GPs and PPTQs a lot. So having, it's weird that Leyline is good against that deck, and I'm mentioning it because the deck is quite bad. But it's come up a lot for me. It never comes up on Mono. I feel like people basically never play the deck on Mono, but it does come up. We have 2 Tireless Tracker. This card is very good in the mirror. It's very good against mid-range. It's very good against control. It's a very important card in the sideboard, and it fills a role that previously things like Inferno Titan and Wormcoil Engine and Batterskull and these very expensive cards were filling. And instead, all you do is you play this, play a fetch land, or you ramp into it, play a land, and you're immediately ahead with a threat to be very, very far ahead very quickly. We have 2 Ancient Grudge, 1 Fracturing Gust, and 1 Nature's Claim, really splitting the type of artifact and enchantment removal that we might play. One thing that you have to understand, and one of the reasons that I really like these versions of this deck, is between Engineered Explosives, Fracturing Gust, Nature's Claim, and the Sweepers, we now have some semblance of a game against Boggles that you don't have outside of that with most Scapeshift decks. And I think that Boggles has both been on the uprise a little bit, and it is something that you need to worry about. So Boggles is something you need to worry about. Because of that, I'm going to continue to play things like Fracturing Gust. And for a long time, I was on the Shatter Storm plan. And the truth is that because of your ramp, you're able to play Fracturing Gust and gain equity in multiple matchups by playing this, because it's good against Affinity and Boggles and other decks. So the last card in our sideboard is 1 Crumble to Dust. So here's the thing. Most matchups that you bring this in are already good for you, but they can cheese you out. So I wanted 1 card for those matchups. They're good for you. You could cut this and play a Reclamation Stage. I wouldn't blame you. It kind of depends. But overall, pretty happy with this. Pretty happy with this deck. I've kind of talked a lot on this one about the types of changes that I'm thinking of making. This is the deck that I will likely play in Vegas. It will be a Titanshift variant. I think Titanshift is good right now. I don't expect Modern to change significantly between now and then we'll see what the SEG results look like this weekend, right? So it's happening right now, and that could shape a little bit more. But Shift hasn't been this good in a little while. And I'm excited to try it out in Vegas as long as I can. So, thank you everybody for watching. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Please give me feedback. I love talking about my deck lists and things like that. Thank you everybody so much. Just to be clear, we might have skipped a Sacred Foundry on our count. So we might have one more land than I said. Kind of looking over the deck list while I was talking, I just want to mention that at the end that I might have made a mistake there. I'm not sure. I would have to rewatch to make sure. But thank you everybody so much, and we'll see you guys all next week with another deck tech.